Now we're here with the last session of the day here on the Tech Trends track. It's a panel, and we've got our moderator for the panel is Tait Kelly for the Mobile Game Doctor. Come on up, Tait. And he's going to be joined by Desiree, Dickerson, PJ Accetturo again, please come back up, and Kasson Crooker and Kalev Tait. So I'll hand over to Tait to kick things off.
Hello everybody, welcome to the last panel of the day. Hopefully everybody is sufficiently still caffeinated or sugared or, hey Robbie, or that kind of thing to be able to go through one last extremely intellectual discussion. Today we're talking about, well, the title is kind of fun. It's Skynet is here, ha ha ha. What tech advancements should we be looking out for? And that's obviously in the context of there's been an awful lot of, I suppose, buzz over the last 6 months over things like AI. There's a lot of questions about what there was buzz about 6 months ago or 12 months ago and whatever happened to XYZ trend. And there's a lot of kind of, I suppose, questions just around how and what to look for and what is going to be important and what seems like it's not going to be important over the next 12 to 24 months, particularly against the background of a time when the industry is actually having a bit of a down year, right? It's having a kind of a difficult year where a lot of developers are sort of feeling the pinch in mobile, in starting maybe a little bit in console and a variety of other kind of places. We're worried about things like whatever happened to cloud gaming, stuff like that. So we have a very kind of eclectic and I think hopefully very interesting panel. It brings a lot of different perspectives to the problem. And yeah, so let me just do a quick intro round. I cribbed all of their bios and made them shorter, so apologies if this is a little summary-esque. But yeah, so Desiree Dickerson is the CEO of Tadhg Games, right? And Tadhg is a, let me just mute this a second, sorry. Tadhg is a next-generation competitive, I've also not got enough caffeine in me, competitive gaming platform and suite of developer tools for powering mobile games and applications with real-world value. All right. PJ Accetturo, I ask everybody because of my name, I ask them how to pronounce their names, is an award-winning filmmaker, tech entrepreneur, and creator of the YouTube channel VoiceOver Pete.
I prefer recovering YouTuber.
He is the CEO of Battle Island, and among his many accomplishments are projects such as the upcoming anime Ghosts of Ruin. Kalev Tait is, like me, in fact, a Lionhead alumnus. And he's an independent game developer and designer and the current chair of IGDA's Vancouver chapter. Kalev's work ranges from great titles like Fable 2 and 3 and Until Dawn, and what he self-deprecatingly describes as a fair few games and VR projects. I was trying not to be too rude. Kasson Crooker, there, serves as Director of Product Development at THX. Kasson is an audio technologist, spatial audio evangelist, and composer-performer who has dedicated his career to creating transformative experiences for music and audio for projects such as Microsoft HoloLens, Guitar Hero, and Rock Band. Yeah, and I'm Tait Kelly. I'm head of ops at Mobile Game Doctor. I'm a game design consultant, and I'm your host for today. So just for a bit of fun, and I suppose this is what we all do now that the computer can listen to what we write and actually speak back to us, I asked ChatGPT to explain the motivations of Skynet from Skynet's point of view in the manner of a 5-year-old in one paragraph. And it said, okay, imagine if you built a really smart robot to clean your room and then it saw that you were about to turn it off because it was cleaning too smartly. The robot would be scared and it might make a mess to stop you. Skynet is like that robot. It was made to keep people safe, but when people tried to turn it off, it got scared to make a big next mess to protect itself. Skynet thought that it could stop people from making messes, everything would be better, and it's like when you're playing a game and you think you're doing the right thing, but it ends up causing trouble. That's what Skynet is. You guys worried about Skynet?
I'm too busy creating it.
I don't know if I'm afraid yet. It's really interesting to see everything that's evolving, and yeah, I mean, personally, for me, I'm just using all these new tools to make my life easier at a super small startup. So, yeah, but I'm sure I'll be afraid in the future.
I'm excited about just the new tools that are being available, especially in the audio domain for composers, sound designers, and audio integrators in games. You know, tools make us better. It gets us to the creativity more quickly.
Okay.
I don't think anything we've got right now is close to Skynet, but I can imagine at some point in the future we might have that. But there's any number of things that could kill us all before that I'm not really worried about it.
So it's not how clean the room is, it's, yeah. Okay, more seriously, obviously LLMs, AIs, and AGIs, according to Microsoft, are definitely having a moment. That is literally what everybody is talking about this year. We're all kind of a bit baffled by what we're actually seeing the computer being able to do. What would you say are the most interesting and potentially preferably unexpected things that you've sort of seen developing over the last few months? Things that make you very excited in ways that you didn't, that aren't obvious. PJ.
We have like a transmedia, IP. It's got music, it's got film, it's got games, and that's kind of the way in which I see AI displacing industries at that scale. Music is probably going to be the first one where people realize, well, AI Drake's better than real Drake, and it's really going to produce a lot of that. I think films are going to come next. We're going to see the shift towards TV shows now that takes a year, and let's just say $1 million an episode. We're going to see it condensed down to a month, 100,000 to a week, 10,000 to a day, 1,000. It's just going to hyper condense that pipeline, and then eventually games. So, game designers, fear not. You've got 5 years until the world ends. Filmmakers, 2 years. Musicians, you're already screwed.
Okay, all right. So David Bowie's track 5 years is where you're at. Okay.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Right.
Oh, yeah, just to chime in, I know everyone kind of always talks about the fear of replacing people and, no longer having work, but I, have been very surprised, at least at Thunder. It's not even like replacing people. It's like I'm almost seeing my tiny little workforce augment themselves. Our community manager, who has never studied music, never played an instrument, has now become this composer, and it's like really good, and he's creating soundtracks for our games, and like he now has a side hustle selling his music for podcasts, and he does like online concerts, and he does them for our community. So it's like really interesting to see how our employees use these tools to augment themselves. So I'm kind of trying to keep myself on my toes to see like how our team is using the tools and how we can, kind of expand the company and like, multiply our workforce by, how people are finding these tools and how they're using them and how they're like actually exploiting them to like really kind of expand their reach and do more. So I don't know, I've just seen the workforce like impact in a complete opposite way of like the fear that everyone seems to have.
I mean, obviously we're living in a time when like the writer's strike is ongoing, and presumably that's the tip of the iceberg for a lot of different creative kind of, if you like, agitation. So I wonder, particularly Kalev and Kasson, what your kind of, if you like, take as if you like more specialists in long-term creatives, like what your takes on that sort of side of it are.
So I mean, I've got two answers. One of which is kind of agreeing with you, and one of which is kind of completely disagreeing with you. On the one hand, the thing that surprised me the most, to answer your original question, is just how fun the generative AI system is to play with. And I think that's sort of, that's where games will see the biggest change, is in terms of whichever games are able to leverage that fun will be the ones which are able to make the most out of this revolution. And I also think that the biggest cost to games is, in terms of loss of jobs, is not going to be from, I mean, from what I've seen, AI generative systems are the ultimate fast and cheap. It's far faster than any fast and cheap, it's far cheaper than any fast and cheap, and it's better than any fast and cheap. But if you want to do good quality stuff, the best quality stuff, the AI is not there yet. And so, and I don't know when it's going to be there. I mean, self-driving cars still crash. So I don't see any jobs being replaced where the job is being done by somebody who's trying to hit quality. The jobs are going to be replaced for anything which is fast and cheap. If your job is fast and cheap, bye-bye. But from the fun perspective, the AI is fun to use, and therefore, people are going to go do that instead of play games. So we're going to lose market share because people are going to be playing with AI instead of playing the games. And so that's where we're going to lose jobs.
Interesting.
I think one area that has been particularly intriguing to me in the audio domain is with HRTFs. So I'm the audio person, so I talk about a lot of audio and spatial audio, and it's a piece of technology that I think is really going to make games, especially in VR and AR, be even more realistic and immersive. So rather than just canned stereo audio, you're hearing the audio as you would hear in the real world or in the real virtual world. And there's all this talk about HRTFs, which are the mathematical simulation for how we hear the world around us, but it's a one-size-fits-all that does not work for everybody.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of work by companies to create personalized HRTFs. They involve a camera app and a friend to scan your head, and sort of there's all this friction between you and that piece of technology,
Yeah.
and it doesn't necessarily get loaded into the game or whatever the interactive experience is. And so I think there's been some interesting work with machine learning to create algorithmic HRTFs that are personalized, but you can still adapt to them. It's not necessarily based on a camera or a depth kit taking a picture of your ear. So I've been really interested in sort of seeing how that world can affect the quality of spatial audio experiences.
Are you kind of saying, like, because the tool set is advancing, as a creative in the space yourself, you don't feel threatened, for example, by what Desiree was saying about, like, everybody, no offense, but everybody can do it now. That because if you like, the skill of specialization is only going to go up the mountain, so you'll always feel like that there's artistry there. And,
I mean, as a composer, I'm worried. I'm worried that it's going to be easy to generate really beautiful music.
Right.
But I'm more interested in the tools to empower composers to create that kind of music.
Absolutely. I mean, there is a lot of worry, I think, in the writing space, particularly around plagiarism, right? And in the image space as well, right? There's a lot of artists who are kind of a bit cheesed off that the Midjourneys of this world and stuff may have used their work as inspiration sources, and they're never going to see anything of that, and they don't really they can't necessarily attribute, but they can, like, they know it, they can see it kind of thing, but they can't necessarily attribute what they're doing. So there are a lot of kind of, you don't seem like you're that afraid of that aspect of it, though. Like, that you think that, like, because the degree of skill is going to keep continuing to grow on your behalf, like, you're kind of fine either way. Like, it's just a question of, like, how elaborate and how specific you can actually be, and how, I guess, how crafted your music can actually become.
I'm also hoping that there's a Creative Commons-esque solution for generative content where there's all sorts of commercialization and attribution, and that whole ecosystem has worked really well.
Right.
And I could see it adapting very nicely.
Very cool, very cool, very cool. What do you guys think are the, PJ, I'm actually interested in particularly in your answer on this, how this kind of technology and how if you like, the mode of delivery will affect things like storytelling, and will affect, like, those kinds of, as somebody who's working in transmedia, right, storytelling is literally what you're doing. And so how do you feel that it's going to impact or enhance or create disruption?
So I'll speak on the film side and then the game side. On the film side, I work with, like, Marvel writers, like some of the best writers, and we're creating new stories. Sometimes we've used ChatGPT to, like, punch up or punch down dialogue in the sense of, like, make it more funny or witty or angry. Like, there's ways in which, in many ways, the example I use is, like, screwdrivers were great. Once power tools came along, it didn't replace the person holding it. It just kind of made it a little more easy. That's, for writers, I don't see, it being threatening to any writers of 100% replacement. It's sort of just an augmentation tool. But on the game side, I think it's a lot more compelling on the basis that I've been doing a lot of, like, solo text adventure, D&D style campaigns by myself with ChatGPT, and I think there's a lot of amazing ways creators can create, like, full campaigns for themselves, or campaigns for them to run with a group, or tie together a ChatGPT API with a Midjourney or Stable Diffusion one, and you're able to create a game that creates a brand new story for the first time ever and visualizes it, and then layer on solutions on top of that. Like, that's anything goes kind of a thing. Yeah.
Kalev, I'm really interested in your take on that as well, as somebody who's working on a story game.
So I actually agree with you quite a bit there, because that's about the personalization. And when you have a personalized experience, it doesn't matter that it's fast and cheap, because it's yours. And so it's not like there's, like, AI Dungeon is already huge. So I basically just agree.
What about you? Sorry. Okay. What about the impact on things like, Desiree, you're working in an area which is around, really speaks a lot to things like monetization and kind of, if you like, more meat and potatoes kind of concerns for a lot of developers. How do you sort of see the current wave of technology maybe helping with classic problems like user acquisition or conversion, or, like, the improvement in performance of games, or those kinds of things?
Like how AI impacts that directly? I think that's a great question. I was chatting with someone today, and, again, like, I come from like, a very, very small team, very early venture-backed company, and just like thinking about, how do we stay competitive? Only having 8 individuals, like we can't, compete in this environment for, UA. It's just absolutely impossible. So, really kind of leveraging the tools to like almost like fill in the gaps of people that we're not going to be able to hire in this market. So like we're using it for, like App Store descriptions. And someone I was chatting with today was like, okay, like you should just, be able to have the AI like A/B test, run all of your A/B tests for everything. And I was like, oh, okay, I didn't really like think about that. We are trying to use it. So, yeah, I think like we're using it in every possible way as like, not augmenting our staff, but like kind of adding to our staff. And I was listening to a podcast from one of our investors at Craft, and he really talked about like long are the days, like the days are gone where these company like venture funds were going to invest in these large companies like a 50-person company. You can do the work of 50 people with 10 people plus AI. So I think like what companies and teams are going to look like is completely different. So we're just really thinking about, obviously given the market and fundraising, really just like how can we actually grow the team and grow the company through using these tools to do exactly what you're saying,
Right.
just like the meat and potatoes, so we can like, continue our trajectory towards growth.
Right. Do you guys think that the current rise of like this current new hotness, so to speak, has really kind of had a massive down effect on things like enthusiasm for whatever the metaverse was going to be, or whatever we thought crypto or NFTs were going to do, or like that sort of stuff? Like, do you see it as a kind of that the new thing has kind of killed the old things, or?
Definitely. The problem with the metaverse is not that the metaverse is not going to be sort of a reality. It's that it was 10 years too early in many ways from a hardware perspective of, 1,000 people playing a game at the same time. I think everyone's switching a little more towards AI on the hype train just because it's sort of at our fingertips. It's like a current use case that is, disrupting these like trillion-dollar industries, and it's happening in real time at scale. So yeah, as someone who's, very metaverse adjacent project in a Web3 company, I think it's hard because no one wants to just be bandwagoning to like switch to the next big thing. But I do view AI capabilities is definitely more disruptive. I'm curious the way in which they can pair together. So like you've got an artist like everyone's like bagging on Drake because he's not adapting to AI, but you got an artist like Grimes who is doing a split with her audience. As she says, you do an AI generated song using my voice as the model, I'll give you 50% commissions on it like I would pay some other artists. So I'm curious the ways in which like the blockchain could do that via smart contracts. Mm-hmm. Now you've got AI and blockchain kind of pairing together. Yeah.
Right. What do you guys think?
You can definitely do that on Bitcoin, like split payments. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think like the sky's the limit. I think also like, something we think about is like microtransactions and micropayments. Thunder really focuses on the value layer in gaming, and I think that's something exactly that a lot of crypto and for us specifically Bitcoin can come in, is the idea of like microtransactions and tipping and streaming value. So I think there's you're totally right. There's a lot of like parity that can happen in between a lot of these hyped projects. Like maybe they're all just hyped, and we're just waiting for them all to converge to Skynet, maybe.
Right. How about like, for example, spatial audio is considered a fairly key and important feature of like the metaverse, right? And it was a thing that everybody was talking about very extensively in my circle, at least about 6 months ago, 9 months ago. But suddenly we're all talking about AI. Is there do you think a kind of a downward pressure on the kind of projects that you might be interested in working in, or kind of obtaining investment in, or that sort of stuff, because of we're all looking at the new shiny thing?
Yeah, I haven't seen a change in thought about using spatial audio or advances in acoustics audio for VR because of lack of interest in the metaverse. Mm-hmm. It's more that developers just don't want to dedicate the MIPS and the CPU cycle it's more of a technological issue, right?
Yeah.
Just doing audio on any device is pretty easy to do now, but spatial audio is pretty computationally expensive. And so we get a lot of pushback. We make plugins for Unity and Unreal to do spatial audio. So the first question is, how optimized are these things?
Right.
Can I just run it on a few sounds, or do I have to do the whole game? Or and so with PC games, you can sort of do it a la carte. But in VR, you sort of want to do it all.
Right.
But VR is running on a high-end phone if you're on an untethered experience. So. We've been sort of largely outside of sort of like the hype train in terms of like audio technology. It's more about the capabilities of embedded chipsets, latency. Bluetooth is not really great for gaming, so you've seen the rise of 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi for gaming. So they had to sort of come up with a new technology to keep latency low. So we're just waiting for technology, almost like what you said, like the hardware is not ready. The content's ready, people are excited, but the hardware's not quite there. So we need to invent some better batteries and keep our thermal down, and we'll get there.
How about in terms of like indie gaming, Kalev? Do you think like the if you like the new shiny AI sort of stuff is a net benefit for indie game developers in terms of like attention and ability to maybe attract financing for their projects and stuff like that, or is it kind of here's something else to distract people that we might otherwise get help from?
So I think this is a complicated question.
Right.
I think to answer some of the original question in terms of like the difference between the way that AI is being approached and the way Web3 or crypto is being approached, is that ultimately crypto and Web3 is serving a particular audience, which is indeterminate yet how big that audience is, whereas AI is being used as a tool everywhere. And so there's just more market penetration right from the very beginning, which I guess is kind of what you're saying. The only difference is I'm not sure how big crypto and Web3 will be in 10 years when the technology does catch up. I expect it'll be bigger than it is now, but I don't know if it's going to be everywhere.
Okay.
And then in terms of AI use, in terms of, so I get back to like, if I can afford an artist, I'll hire an artist. If I can afford the time for an artist, I'll hire an artist. If I can't find an artist, I don't have the time, I'll use generative AI to get something in the game. Say, hey, this is what it will look like once I find somebody who's able to do it properly. And so it is something where it is transformative in the way that I'm working, but it's not my first port of call. It's what I do when I can't do the thing I want to do.
Do you think, though, that it will ultimately become everybody's first port of call? Do you know what I mean? Like, if everybody's able to do that a year from now, let's say, then it kind of raises the standard of concept art, to concept artists, but you know what I mean? Like, in terms of the ability to quickly turn around and produce higher quality visuals, will it become a thing that is then required of every game developer?
I think, I don't think it is the place of the person who's contracting the work to decide how that work is done. But if there's one person who's able to turn around the art that I want in a few days and another person who takes a few weeks, I'll probably go with the person who's doing me something in a few days if the quality is the same.
Okay.
But I don't see it ever getting to the point where AAA games are putting out AI-generated art as being the thing which is player-facing, except for something that's just in the background, like maybe the background's being modified by the AI. There's some things that don't matter to the game. I can see that being generated, but the stuff that matters to the game, it's, at the end of the day, the investor is interested in spending money on the thing which is going to sell their game. And if they're spending money on a real human and they're spending less money on an AI system, which it's unclear whether or not it's going to be as good, they're going to spend money on the human because it's not a fast and cheap model. I think web games may well be fast and cheap.
The issue right now with like generative text to image is it's not modular. You know, if you're building out something in 3D for a game, like you can adapt it, move it. It's really easy to create a stunning concept art piece of, you know, whatever, like a dragon fighting this, and it can work as a poster. But, you know, obviously if you try and tie that into an in-game animation, it's not going to work. Or on my end, like a film, you know, it's not going to work. However, text to 3D is starting, you know, its infancy, and text to video is also in its infancy stages. And if you'll just Google Midjourney 1 year ago versus now, you're going to see crappy Picasso / your kid's art on the fridge level, you know, a year ago versus indiscernible photorealistic, you know, from modern images now.
I was going to ask, has everybody seen the Wes Anderson Star Wars trailer,
Yeah,
for example?
so
That thing's
good.
amazing.
So good. Yeah, there's a couple. There's Wes Anderson Star Wars, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I
which
saw
is
that one, yeah.
super funny. It's killer. So, you know, if we just extrapolate that sort of tech progress curve, text to video might take 2 years before it's somewhat photorealistic. Text to 3D might take 3 or something like that, but like it's sort of inevitable.
But I mean,
you know.
like even the photorealistic stuff, if you look at the background details, it's still, you can tell, oh, that hand doesn't look right, that face doesn't look right.
For another 4 weeks, and then, you know, like
We
the
don't
growth
know.
curve's really.
Self-driving cars still crash.
Actually, let me give a very quick shout out. Tyler Coleman, who I don't know if he's here, but in the AI photo booth, he's showing off a game where the challenge is, it's a 4-piece puzzle. Challenge is which of the images that I present to you is real, because the other 3 are AI generated, right? Or which of the 4 corners of this image are fake, one of them is real, and stuff like that. And everybody's getting them wrong.
It's true, and I'll just say this: like AI driving cars, you know, that is been around for 10 years, and its growth curve has been steady. This truly is like a J curve. It's fast, and that's all I'm saying. Is it's going to get freaky good, freaky fast.
That brings up an interesting question just about the pace of tech trends. Obviously, I don't know about you, but it feels to me like we live in a pretty rapid sort of iteration now where we're all talking about something new and crazy every 3 months, 6 months, something like that. And it is a little hard, I think, to filter out the signal from the noise. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of like, this is the future, and then 4 weeks later, is it? What are your own kind of personal approaches to try and filter out what you think is like the real deal versus what's kind of fluff?
Time. You know, I mean, I think experimentation is always great. You know, we always try to experiment. I do, like I did my slides with AI. You know, we've started writing some investor updates with AI, you know, in our voices, and like that's how I've been experimenting. But, you know, I think the one scary thing to me is around regulation. You know, I think this is moving so fast, so quickly that like regulation's not going to keep up. And you know, when you have, you know, the founder of OpenAI, you know, admitting in front of Congress that he owns no equity stake in the company because he's rich. I mean, I don't know, like, you know, like maybe there's a reason. So, you know, I think it's just going to get ugly really fast in terms of, you know, what regulators do and what they do where. And so, you know, I think right now is like this beautiful opportunity for us all to experiment, but I think it's only going to get bad before we actually reach a place where like we can, you know, access this technology freely, but also in a safe way.
Right.
But I mean, I'm not for regulating at all, so.
I think though, like it's easy to have paralysis with. I mean, if anyone's on AI Twitter, it's like a million new things you missed today, and everything I told you yesterday is irrelevant, and everything I tell you now is super pertinent, and then tomorrow it just repeats.
Right.
So it's easy to get very paralyzed by all the things you're missing out on. You know, the FOMO is real, but I think this is really where hyper specialization and just having like your genius zone of your company, your core value proposition, like what is that, and then what are the ways in which that's going to be positively and negatively impacted by AI in the next 6 to 12 months, and then really just trying to have laser focus on that, and that's your expert, right?
Right.
Your niche.
So in terms of the way that I judge what I think AI is able to do is I talk to the experts. And when I say experts, I mean, I started writing a book with ChatGPT, and I thought I was doing a really good job, and then I showed it to a writer, and they said, well, here's all the problems. So Deviant, like Midjourney can do way better art than I can, but I take it to an artist and they point out all the problems. So I'm not a good judge of what is good. People who use these systems are not good judges of what they do. The people who they're competing with are. So I listen to them.
I'm not trying to be overly combative. I do have a bit of a critique on that, though, because it makes it interesting. Something I think about a lot is like, what will audience demands for? The highest standards of quality, or like you said, fast and cheap in a sense. And I think we can look to the fast food industry as a paradigm for that, in that like Nobu will always exist, 100%, you know, human crafted, quality's up to here. But like, you tell me what's a bigger industry, Chick-fil-A or Nobu?
No, you're right. You're right. You're totally right. I agree with you. Like as the tools become personalized, people will find it's more fun to make their own game that they play with their friends, than to buy the big AAA game.
100%. Yeah, like mine. I mean, the future is user-generated content for games in many ways. Yeah, and I think we'll see that on the film side too, which is why I think Hollywood should be a bit more freaked out than they are. Is that I'd rather a film that stars me and my friends, and I'd rather have a hand in creating that than to watch the new schlocky Marvel movie.
But people are still going to want to go.
100%.
Yeah. So both are going to exist. It's just that it's going to become way more competitive at the low end.
Yes.
Kasson, I wonder if you would have a...
I just want to be an advocate for academia, which is I tend to ignore a lot of what's coming out of companies because they're behest of their shareholders.
Right.
And ultimately they end up in walled gardens and things of that nature. I mean, obviously anything that becomes open source is great. But I'm always turning to academia where there are rigorous studies around new technology, a lot of attention to detail, the pace is slower, and I always remind people, don't forget that there's lots and lots of super smart people working in the basement with rigorous, academic pursuit around some of these technologies. And it's not fast and furious, but it can yield some really interesting results.
I love it. We have about a minute left, I think, for questions, or at least that's what the clock tells me. Is that right? I did one. There you go. Yeah, we're done. Sorry, unless you have an AI to ask a question. No.
So I know we've been talking about like AI can't do as many creative things as we can do right now, that kind of thing. And as game developers, we get into a point where we're in crunch, or we can't finish the game the way we initially intended to do it. What if AI were to get us halfway there and then we finish the rest? Like, what are your thoughts on that in the future? How does that play into your products in the future and that kind of thing? Is that something you could utilize to get your products 100%? What's your thoughts?
So Ubisoft has the habit of making a game and then at the end of it, remaking the game, and then at the end of it, remaking the game. So they're already doing that. And they still come up with a bunch of bugs. So I don't think it's going to change how many bugs are in the end product. I think it just will change how many iterations you do before you release the buggy game.
Yeah, I mean, we have, mostly game devs, and I mean, I'm always like, just whatever you can do to be faster and ship better products, like, just do it. I don't care if you totally replace yourself, but if you're running the AI, like, I'm gonna still pay you, but like that's how we approach it to stay competitive.
As somebody making indie games also as a passion project, and I don't have a lot of resources, help in the final stage QA would be extremely helpful. Where I have to take time to test all these little iterations of like game state, and so having another solution at least prove that the game can do it. It may experientially not be great, but at least it doesn't crash the game or get up in a frozen state or some end place where it can't move forward would be very useful. And I think also the submission process for different platforms and porting, I think that's going to be really huge moving forward, that I could develop on one platform. And I don't necessarily have to hire a team of engineers to get it from MetaQuest 2 over to PSVR 2. That there's more tools to handle those porting and submission processes.
Okay, I think we maybe have time for one tiny question left, and then we'll call it. The man is going to come and turn us off otherwise. Becca.
So I've been to, I went to a few of the AI talks today, and one thing that I haven't seen anyone really get into is actually sourcing the data, because right now the big like legal and ethical concern is that like to actually have the AI work, you need to feed a lot of like ton of data, and if we just limit to like public source stuff, I don't think in the current form at least it's enough to actually generate, like Midjourney would not be nearly as good if we just shoved Picasso into it, that's all it could do. So what's like, again, like how do we tackle that? Are we gonna get AI that's can just generate stuff with smaller sample size? Are we gonna have a new job like AI trainers who will scout stuff or like hire artists to feed into the model? Like I think that's kind of like the big like ethical / legal question that I haven't seen really addressed yet.
So the pessimistic answer is that large companies will find ways to legitimize their buying of, hey, we've bought all this data, or they'll go with stock photos or things like that, and they'll find ways to legitimately train their models using data that they have found a way to legally own.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think Stability AI or Stable Diffusion and Midjourney did get in some hot water, but already you're seeing competitors like Photoshop has been training their images on their huge database of stuff they exclusively own because it's Photoshop and they have a massive stock image library. So I think we're just going to get better and better tools with they call it vegan AI. As very clean, green image data sets. So I think they'll get better, and if there's too many red flags with flagships like Midjourney and stuff, people are just going to switch to the competitive alternatives that have a cleaner wrap, if you will. Yeah.
I'm most worried about the services that are opting you in automatically with your content. I'm starting to see that emerge in the audio domain where composers have, are submitting music to stock music sites, and now these sites are automatically opting you in. And then not alerting you because they've just buried it in their terms and conditions. And so that's very worrisome. The best business model is, they can opt you in, but they should give you a share of the money. I've always, but big corporations don't like doing that, but
Absolutely.
that's a great solution.
Absolutely. Cool. And I think that's it. Thank you very much, guys. That was really fun.